I'm Dr. Lindsay Coble.
Dr. Noelle Crosby, and we are the Sound Sisters, and this is the Hearing Diaries. Today, I'm so excited to have Kellye St. Kellye is an operations and data strategist, and that means to me lots of numbers, which scare me. But she reads numbers like novels. She comes with a friendly warning that she's not an audiologist, and we think that is quite all right because she's sharing so much great information with us. And that might actually even be her edge. Kellye's here to show us how your OMS database isn't just record keeping, it's strategy. And she does it with knowledge, precision, and heart. So welcome, Kellye. We're so happy to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Kellye, let's dive right into it. How did you end up in audiology?
Funny story. It was never in my life plans. I went to school originally as an X-ray tech and got bored with that very quickly. You do one chest X-ray, you've done 100 of them. So I then moved into more of an administrative role in some local urgent cares we had here and found out I loved that. And so we got in a joint venture with a large hospital system, and I wanted to secure my role. I did not want to go back to x-raying. So I got my master's in healthcare administration and learned a whole lot. And then in the midst of the joint venture, which became an acquisition, I lost my job. And so ironically, within the same month, I found out I was pregnant and my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. So that's a whole lot at one time, and it's where do I go from here? It's basically resetting my life. And so my dad and stepmom, she's an audiologist and he's a software engineer. They started a small practice in an ENT office, running an exam room in South Florida. And I think in like 2 years, it expanded to 4 full-time clinics. And so they had not laid a lot of the operational groundwork because they were not expecting that rapid growth. So my dad, I don't know if he felt sorry for me or what, or knew I needed a project, but he said, hey, why don't you do some social media marketing or create some landing pages? I'm like, okay. So it worked well because I was able to do this, remote and then take my mom to, MD Anderson for treatments. And so I would sit in the waiting room and, start reading about Ruby 2s to get copy for these pages. And I kept coming across all these acronyms, RIC, ITC, like, what is this? I mean, no wonder people wait 7 years to get hearing aids. They don't know what they're looking at. It was industry jargon everywhere. And so, I very much love a puzzle I can't solve. And that's what audiology was for me. And I just dove deep into it, and it's just kind of how I got to where I am now. Was not in my life plans. Never would have thought that, but that's how I ended up in audiology.
You end up places where you just never know you might be and enjoy it. And you're like, this is where I'm supposed to be. Well, we're so glad that you're here. That's for sure. And let's tell the story about how you and I first met and how, how we engaged and how now why you're here today because of all that.
Yes. Always love a good origin story. So, funny thing, I think it was beginning of 23 and Oticon Intent had just launched. And we were in the middle of we were drowning in TPA patients, right? And so trying to balance that, navigate it, stay afloat, right? So when they announced this is only for private practices, yay, this is it. We even created our own technology level. I think it was exclusive because one thing I learned with hearing technology, people can pretty much invent whatever technology level they want, call it whatever. There's nothing consistent, right? So this was a huge opportunity for us. I mean, we were pre-selling the devices before we even knew the name. And then I see one day on our schedule, a third party who will not be named patient was scheduled. And it said, if the patient wants intent, give us a call. We have to order it on the back end. And I was like, oh, heck no. So Um, I told my stepmom about it, and she said, "Well, you should email Gary Rosenblum." I'm like, "He's not going to respond to my email. Who am I?" But okay, so I did, and he wrote me back immediately. So I was surprised. But in the meantime, while I'm waiting for his reply, I got on the third party Facebook group and made a sarcastic post, but didn't name anybody. I just said, Oticon intent will not be available to TPAs. Private practices, yay. TPA, schedules patient. If they want intent, call, we'll order it on the back end. And then practice.
They said to the wrong person.
Right. So the speed at which that post went from Facebook to Denmark and back, I mean, was impressive. And by the time I called Gary, he had already heard of the post. And I think I'd already deleted it at that point because the TPA had already heard about the post and called our clinic. Another fun story. But I told him what happened and how disappointing it was because, this was our saving grace, the lifeline they were throwing us. And so it somewhat worked its way out, I guess you would say, in the conversation I had with him. But Noelle, I think you were the moderator on the Facebook.
Yeah, I'm the moderator. Yeah.
Yeah. So you messaged me and I saw it and I'm like, oh God, what did I do now? And so, like you were asking more about it and I wouldn't even tell you who the TPA was that,
right. You didn't.
Because I was not trying to throw anybody over the bus. I was not under the bus. I was not trying to make any enemies, but that's how this lovely relationship formed. And I think we spoke one day for maybe an hour and I was telling you about my experience and everything I'd learned. And so the rest is, history.
Well, I know during my conversation with Kellye, I was like, this girl knows a lot and I want to know some of it. And I think she needs to share it with the world. So I'm going to do my best to help her do that.
Blast it out there. Okay, so let's circle back. Once you got ingrained in the audiology field, what surprised you most once you got into our field? Or what have you learned most? What shocked you the most?
So there's a few things. Well, one of them, audiology is such a different beast than the other sectors of healthcare because you're blending retail sales with healthcare. Mm-hmm. And honestly, that does not match. You have to pick, diagnostic or sales, or be very, very strategic about it. But that was a very interesting component to me because I had not experienced that. And then the other interesting aspect was for a field that is so technologically advanced. I mean, you've got AI in your ear. It can translate real time what you're hearing. Yet the clinics, they're still using paper clipboards and nothing's automated and handwriting L&D forms. And, just seeing this within our family practice, I'm like, what is going on? And when I logged into the OMS for the first time, this is like my 1999 Nokia phone I'm looking at. I'm like, use that. I'm used to these bigger EMR systems on the other side of healthcare. And it was interesting to wrap my brain around because there was so much, not really resistance, I guess, to change, but it was so far behind, but yet their product was so advanced. And
so interesting.
How can we close this gap here? What is going on? And so that then again created a big problem and that I wanted to solve and untangle. And so me being a systems thinker, that was right up my alley. So I dove all in. So that was probably the biggest shock.
And that's my next question is, so what did you do? How did you start using your OMS system or data to have it more strategic and to find out the things, that you thought it should be doing already?
So when I logged into this platform, just trying to make sense of the reporting because I'd been doing landing pages and social media. So I wanted to see, okay, what are the results looking like? And, our staff got the referral source for every patient. They were phenomenal about that. However, it was free texted somewhere within the chart. So there's no way for me to run a report to see what it's looking like. And then even still, the reporting capabilities were not very good. And one time I was at a conference and I saw a girl had a different OMS pulled up on her computer. And I was like, what is that? And she told me. So I did a demo the next day. I was like, sign me up, we're going. So that was the biggest, I think, changing factor in how our practice went from where we were to where we ended up. Because I was remote, I had the ability to really dive into the system, figure out the capabilities, what it can do, and how I can make it work for us, right? So I configured everything based on our workflows and had in mind the entire time what kind of data I wanted to collect, right? So there's always, there's a lot of bad data from the past that you can't always fix, but you can start today with, collecting clean data, right? So that's what we did. We tracked everything on our virtual super bill line item list. I had everything on there, including ear impressions for TPAs, because like, how many of these are we doing for free? They're not paying us for our time and material on the impressions. And I calculated out how much it cost us for each. So I could look at a report and see how many, are we doing? And then how many evals are we doing for these TPA referrals that aren't converting, and so just
love it. Yeah.
like that. Yeah. So it just starts building up and building up. And the whole TPA aspect really intrigued me because that wasn't something I dealt with before in urgent care, ortho, anything like that. And everybody complained about it. That was all I would hear as the TPAs, managed care, and and I'm looking like, where's my inheritance going? No, just kidding. But I mean,
that's it. You got to think about those things.
Well, I mean, so I was seeing how hard, my stepmom and the rest of our staff worked for, providing the same level of care for these patients and, for pennies on the dollar. And so, I took the deep dive into TPAs to try to figure that out. And kind of in doing that, let me know, okay, this is how this system works over here. This is all free. So I need to make sure that is what we are providing, that we're not giving away any more of our time because time was the most valuable resource, right? And with calculating out what our break even rate was, and then literally down to the minutes I had tracked through our OMS because I could see here's a history of their appointments and the length and being able to calculate that versus and then say, okay, it was X amount of dollars out of our pocket for our time. I could very quickly see this is not sustainable long term. And looking at our numbers year over year, TPA versus private pay units, I mean, every year TPA was more and more and more than private pay. And eventually you're just going to cease to exist, right? So I had to get into our database and really look at it, analyze it, and see what can we do, right? So I downloaded, we had 7 years worth of patient data, 44,000 appointments, so I had a lot of stuff to look at. And using that was able to redo our service plan offerings, really something as basic as that. And what I found, because I could track in my database the TPA they were with versus a private pay that had, a full service plan for, 3 years, because that's what we sold when we opened up. It's great cash revenue right then, but long term, it's not. I noticed there was a preference for the smaller service plans, right? So some of the TPAs that offered, 3 visits. And one of the common reasons we also had for patients not converting, because we tracked our opportunities, and the reason they did not convert was I can get it cheaper at Costco. It's cheaper online. The patients in our area were really focused on the bottom line. What's that bottom dollar amount? They didn't care about 35 years of education and experience. It didn't matter. So we had to adjust our way of thinking and our methods to the shifting patient, expectations. So in doing that, I took what I learned from the billing and coding classes I had taken and literally itemized out every single piece of it. And in doing so, we could adjust the amount of care we included, whether it was 3 visits, 5 visits, or they wanted the whole thing. It provided an opportunity to give patients the ability to say, yes, I do want premium technology, but I only want, 3 visits. And then that way, what they're paying is comparable or even cheaper than Costco or this TPA. And so we started doing that. And it was on a case by case basis because, patients come in with different insurances and stuff. And so because of our tracking in our database, I could tell you exactly how many patients had, Medicare plan or Aetna Medicare Premier Plus PPO. I mean, literally down to the plan. So we took that information and then this new approach to our service plan offerings. And 2024 was the first year we sold more private pay than TPA. And that was a huge win for us.
Because you were transitioning away, you were trying to keep them in your practice instead of sending them to the TPA or, which is and it shows that you can do that and be successful.
It's just, you have to be very strategic with it and you have to be able, it's going to be very specific to your practice. You can't see or look at what someone's doing down the street because you don't know their overhead. You don't know their cost of goods.
Right.
And so we had to look at every single piece of the puzzle to be able to determine that. And even as far as, looking at our appointments and no-show rates, the highest no-show rates were certain TPAs. So we cut them out. But some really cool things we were able to determine from our database was the patient most likely to return a hearing aid is female, ages 70 to 79, and she purchased premium technology.
That is so interesting.
Right. And so having that information, I went to the providers and said, this is what the numbers show, what are your thoughts? Because, they're the ones there with the patient asking the questions. I don't know, that's not in my area, but I can give you the numbers and together, we can figure it out. So basically what we figured out was happening is they didn't need the premium technology. They couldn't work it or figure it out. They're sitting home, watching Wheel of Fortune all day or knitting, it just was too much for them. And we added a question to our patient intake, and it was a scaled response, 0 to 10, and had the patient rate their level of experience and how comfortable they were with technology. Majority of them from the older population were not comfortable with it, didn't know a lot about it. They still had a flip phone. So knowing that, okay, it changed our product offering to that demographic. And the interesting part of that, we had a higher profit margin on the, mid-range technology versus the premium. So we could sell more of them than at that point because it's a lower cost and we're making more. So just learning these little pieces of information from our database and incorporating them as we came across them was instrumental in being able to really shift from TPA and barely getting by to something
It's kind of like MVP, only you did it yourself. Like you were looking at it just specifically for your practice before MVP was really around, right?
Yeah. And love MVP, by the way. Very like-minded. One of the things I did to help with this is our OMS we were using had webhook capabilities. And I did not know what a webhook was, but I liked the idea of it and I was going to figure it out. And so I did and was able to create this real-time dashboard for our practice that incorporated really some of the metrics I like to track that helps me see where we're at with our strategy and our plan and is it working. And so that was huge for me being a numbers person to be able, real time to see where we were at as far as our, plan went.
I love that. And I'm a numbers person too. So I love deep diving into the numbers and looking at everything. I think one question that comes to my mind is you said the business shifted from probably before you joined, maybe historically mostly private pay, then a ton of third parties. Then in 2024, you kind of came out of it. what was that shift like getting the providers on board to do like a match plan or a, take the patients direct? Was that an easy transition? Was it tricky for the patient, provider?
It's easier on paper, I'll tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I've noticed is that providers undervalue themselves so much.
Mm-hmm.
And because they're of the mindset and trained to help people,
Mm-hmm.
improve their quality of life, they're putting that, in the forefront and not really willing to charge the patient when they should, because it's an awkward conversation, and like I just helped you be able to hear, okay, I'm going to need, $2,500.
Mm-hmm.
So to help that, we had all the payments go through the front desk person, and the patient, like eliminate that component between the provider and the patient. That's an awkward conversation anyway. And so if there was a visit fee, due, we would collect that before even going to the back. So that was one piece that helped. As far as training the providers on how to do it, that was fairly easy. We within our OMS, you can create templates. And so I had templates for each insurance plan. And so they could just pull it up and see almost even a script and what that plan included, what we could bill for, et cetera. Because you've also got the component of, well, if I'm contracted with this TPA and have to take them, like how do you navigate that? So as much information as I knew, I would put in there so they could have it. The hardest piece of this was training the providers on what to say to the patient.
Yeah.
Them that value proposition, selling themselves, and it's not a one size fits all formula for that. One of the things we did to kind of help with that, infographics are great, visual guides, right? So we would.
Well, I've seen some of yours too, and they're pretty.
Thank you. Just showing, what the journey looks like through a TPA versus privately. And being able to say, technically you're not my patient at this point. Your insurance contracted with this company who's already decided what care you need. They've never met you. They don't know your history, but they've already decided you get 3 visits, and you can only get, this level of technology. So there's no, choice in there. And they've even decided, what products we can fit you with. So being able to contrast that with the flexibility of going, private pay and really being able to personalize that experience and not make it a one size fits all treatment plan. And also adding in, if you do need to exchange or return your hearing aids, if you go through the TPA, that could take up to 30 days to get your money back, however that process looks versus privately. And then it was really just focusing on the things that weren't included in the TPA, the whatever we could think of to make it that added benefit, telehealth is included, or Bluetooth pairing, because some TPAs are saying you have to do the Bluetooth pairing. Well, that's a separate service, and that takes a lot of time if you're trying to teach someone who's not very tech savvy how to pair their phone.
Oh, yes.
So, yeah. So, and then, obviously like collecting it at the front desk and not the provider, because we would hear, well, that took you 2 seconds to do.
Yeah.
Well, I went to school.
Oh, yeah, only 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Buddy.
good labor. I mean, there's a saying, I think it was cheap labor is not always good, good labor is not cheap. So
Cheap.
kind of that same concept, or skilled labor, whatever it is. But it just would honestly just, a lot of practice and with being able to explain that to patients was what it took. There was some in the beginning that probably did not go very well, but it's a learning experience. Take what you learn from it, adjust it a little bit, and try it again until you get it right.
Yeah.
But
And I think it's important too to decide who you want to be in your community. Or do you want to be the TPA person? Do you want to be the person that provides all the services? I know Lindsay's kind of going through, her identity, because she lives in a different place too, and that makes a difference as well. But it's just finding, the heart of your business and what you want it to be. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's hard to kind of walk that middle line.
Mm-hmm.
But wow, Kellye, I mean, just the information that you can provide is just amazing. Just tell me a little bit about what you're up to now. Like what are you doing? What do you want to do? Just talk a little bit about that.
There's so much. Currently right now I work for an OMS. I'm not here to promote them, so I'm not going to say who it is, but I love them and I love doing that because one, I get to do the whole data aspect and, deep dive into things, but also, when we get new clinics that convert from another OMS or brand new, they have a lot of questions, right? They need to know, they're asking, how do I track third parties or how do I set this up? And so I love being able to jump on a call with them. I always screen share and I make them drive and, click around, it's the only way you're going to learn. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I'm make sure to spend a lot of time teaching them how to do it. That way the next time they'll know, because it's not going to do any good if I set it up for you and then later I'm not here and you don't set your
Oh yeah,
OMS.
like me asking the same question 20 times. I know I did this like 4 months ago,
I feel like when I
but I
open my
forgot
clinic,
already.
when I open my clinic, I will tell everybody setting up my OMS was the most overwhelming part. I feel
Yeah.
like I could open my S Corp,
Mm.
I could paint the walls, I could design my floor plan, I picked my equipment, but I'm like something about setting up the OMS just like froze me in my mind. It was so overwhelming. So
And having
that's
somebody
such a
like
good thing.
Kellye there would have been amazing, right?
Yes, to make me drive and click.
Right.
I ended up having to go to some other of my friends' clinics to be like, let me just watch the whole point of this. Let me just watch this happen.
Well,
Yeah.
and
That's the Kellye.
one of the things I've seen that I thought was interesting is in a lot of these calls, clinics are wanting ultimately what's business advice versus OMS.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mhm.
whenever like setting it up from day one is so important and knowing what you want to monitor and track in your KPIs. And
Mm-hmm.
I always ask people, well, what's your end goal? And then
Mm-hmm.
kind of work backwards from there. If it's to sell to a manufacturer, okay, cool. Because
Mm-hmm.
I worked for one, I know what type of information they're going to want from their M&A team to look at. So,
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell them, okay, well, let's make sure to set this up, do this here. But like a lot of times, I think clinics would be so happy if the majority of this personalization was just done for them already and said,
Mm-hmm.
okay, here you go.
Mm-hmm.
Like and no
This
mess
is what's
involved.
most common. Here you go.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
hmm
Mm-hmm.
Because like you said, it's so overwhelming. You have to create all of these referral types, appointment types, documents, what I want my schedule to look like,
Mm-hmm.
and it is a lot and it can be very overwhelming. But audiologist needs, shouldn't have to worry about that. You should be able to just focus on patient care and keep providing, that service because that's not something I could do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or do I, want to, but the back end stuff, setting everything up. Oh yeah, I'll do that all day. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I know it is a lot. It is very overwhelming, but
Yes.
it's one of those necessary, boring pieces that you have to
You have to
do.
have.
Yeah.
You want to, sell out and then spend your days on the beach.
Mhm. Yeah. So one thing I want to mention, our Be Curious segment this time is actually going to focus on a service or a product, I guess, or service that Kellye's going to be providing in the future called Hearing Shield Pro.
Here's Shield Pro.
Hear Shield Pro. And we're going to actually be focusing on that a little bit more in the future. But watch out because she is going to have something that I think we're all going to want to be part of. I don't know if you want to say anything about it at this point, Kellye, or.
Yeah,
Mm,
sure. I'll give a little bit of information. So the concept actually came from my experience with our practice and this whole, TPA thing and what can we do, right? And I've found it very difficult within the audiology community for people to really share resources. How do you do this, or where do I get this
yeah.
information? And so much of it's honestly publicly available. So my thought was I would love to have almost a big audiology knowledge base, right? And so within this app, I have so much information, all of the Medicare policy guides that are applicable to audiology. And I've pulled out just the audiology specific information that answers the questions like, can a fourth year extern bill for this? And, what about that? And so it's all right there, as well as links to, Blue Cross Blue Shield Federal's updated hearing aid policy. So you can see what that is. Then the process and steps for new graduates, getting your Medicare number, your NPI, all of that stuff, CAQH, it's all overwhelming, like you said. So bringing all of that into one spot, as well as like, hey, here's all the audiology CPT codes and diagnosis codes. And so it's a resource as far as that goes. But then also, probably the secret ingredient would be, there's 6,000 or so Medicare Advantage plans in the US every year.
Many?
Well, and that's not counting group Medicare Advantage plans that are private. These are just the publicly available ones for patients who choose for Part C versus traditional. And so all of those benefits are actually available online publicly, but you have to do a lot of digging and researching to be able to find those. So I've used my magic and cut all that work out. So within this app, you can see, okay, this plan, it's a $1,250 benefit every year, each year. And then, I'm bringing you the information. What you do with it is up to you. I'm not giving advice on like, here's how you can, beat this CPA or match it, whatever. I'm just bringing all of this publicly available information into one spot.
And so it's probably the only resource available that's going to have all of that in one spot, which is pretty amazing.
I've never heard of anything like it. Yeah, I love it.
No.
So cool.
We'll be ready to hear more about that.
Absolutely. And it's specific with my ultimate, I guess, person I would want to use it would be small practice owners. The ones that are, focusing on, keeping your practice and you being able to determine what your patients get and not having to, be dictated by managed care rules that may or may not conflict with Medicare laws that you have to follow, So bringing all of that in for private practice owners is probably what's most important to me.
I love Wonderful. That. And we all thank you.
Thank you. We can't wait to hear more about it. Let's do the rapid fire questions. I'll let you start, Lindsay.
Okay. What's one word that would describe you and why?
Resilient.
Didn't somebody else say resilient?
Probably.
I guess that's a word.
No idea, but I love it.
Yeah. And I would say super smart or just smart. Very smart. Brilliant. That would be my word for you.
Yeah. No, I have to say resilient because a lot of things in my personal life I've, gone through, but I'm still here today, still smiling, trying, making it work, haven't given up yet. And then professionally as well, losing my job of 9 years was what I thought the worst thing that could happen was actually the best, surprisingly. I mean, I wouldn't be where I am now had they not, fired me. But you have to be resilient and keep, going forward and see, okay, what can I learn from this? And, keep on. Otherwise you can get caught up in the, well, what if this, what if that? So I'd go with resilient.
Resilient. I love it. If you could master any new skill overnight, what would it be?
To sing on key.
I would like that one too.
Good one. Yeah. Where do you see hearing healthcare 10 years from now?
So I have given that question a lot of thought. And I think for audiology, at least, it's really going to be, you're going to have to focus on selling yourself and your services as the differentiator, because with TPA prices as low as they are and manufacturers increasing prices for their customers and tacking on shipping charges, you're not going to have any room to use the device to make money. It's going to be in what is your service plan offer? What value are you providing? So to get, ready and prepared for that, now is when you want to start figuring out how much is my time worth? What do I want to include? Because that's what you're going to have to sell. It's not going to be about, ASP.
The widget. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's a coffee order that gets you through committee meetings and Zoom calls?
Well, if I'm out and about at Starbucks, it will be a caramel ribbon crunch frappuccino with an extra shot of espresso.
Oh, there you go. Get you
Sounds
through
yummy.
the day. What's a sound that makes you happy?
That would probably be the sounds at the beach of the waves crashing onto the shore. I just find it so peaceful being able to hear that and then feel the sand and then smell the ocean air. It's very grounding for all of your senses. That's my happy place.
Love
I hope you get a chance to do that a lot.
that.
If money wasn't a concern, what would you do?
I would have a thrift store / antique store. And I would name it Serendipity Doodle.
I love it. Serendipity Doodle.
All the things.
Yeah.
What is one thing our profession could do better, either for patients or for each other?
So actually have one thought on both of them. For each other would be to share resources that benefit the profession and collectively agree to no TPAs, because if people stop contracting with them, if you don't feed it, it dies. As far as patients go, would really be to treat them like patients, not revenue, because so often I read about complaints. They stole my patient, or I referred this person for a CI and they sold him, whatever. Like, it shouldn't be about that, in my opinion. Like, if that truly was the best, physician or specialist to treat your patient, go with that. That's what's more important than you making, however much off this hearing aid, sale. Like, it becomes so much about stealing patients. Like, well, that was my patient. And then TPA's calling. No, we referred them. That was our patient. It's just not even about the patient at that point. But
that's a good one, Kellye. Thank you for bringing that to our attention too. Yes. And then finally, we're all about the B theme. What B fits you best? Kind, brave, curious, bold, or happy?
Curious, because I ask a lot of questions. Trying to understand things. Yep, it gets me in trouble sometimes, but just curious.
You have to know. You have to ask to know.
Yes.
Exactly.
Well, Kellye, it's been wonderful having you here today. And I knew all about you, but I'm so glad that we're able to share it with everybody else. And you've reminded us that data isn't just about spreadsheets. It's about clarity, confidence, and care. When you actually listen to what your numbers are saying, they become a guide, not a grind. And I think that is so important to really, you need to look at those numbers.
And it's been so nice meeting you, Kellye. I'm so happy to hear your story. It sounds like we can all learn so much from you. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been great.
Yeah, and we'll have you back next time. But for now, thanks for joining us on the Sound Sisters, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you. Bye.